Hi everybody, I'm Michelle Roy of Dragonfly Wellness, and this is Wellness Wednesday. So today's topic is breathing. This is something, it's probably the other thing that I love to teach as much as meditation. So I have spoken with you about this book in the past, Breath by James Nestor. I love this book, was evangelizing about this book, still am evangelizing about this book ever since I read it. And I wanted to offer you a breathing technique today that I think is particularly helpful and healthful. It is something you can do to reset your breathing, and it's something that really contributes to long-term breathing health. So I'm pulling today's inspiration from the chapter Exhale. There's an entire chapter just on exhaling and the importance of emptying the lungs completely. So this is based on some really groundbreaking work by a man, excuse me, named Carl Stowe, who was a choir conductor from the 40s. He was teaching choirs and started getting great results in teaching his singers how to breathe well, which enhanced their singing performance. So then later on, he was approached to work with some emphysema patients. And so here is a little excerpt from the book, just to kind of give us a context to work with this breath. In 1958, the administration of the East Orange Veterans Affairs Hospital in New Jersey called. They said, "You must know something about breathing that we don't," said Dr. Maurice J. Small, who was the chief of tuberculosis management. Small was wondering if Stowe might be interested in training a new group of students. None of them could sing, and a few couldn't walk or talk. They were emphysema patients, and they were in desperate need of help. When Stowe arrived at the East Orange Hospital weeks later, he was horrified. Dozens of patients were laid out on gurneys, each one jaundiced and pale, their mouths craned open like fish, oxygen tubes pumping to no avail. The hospital staff didn't know what to do, so they just wheeled the men across the waxed terrazzo floors and into a room hung with faded yellow tissue dispensers and American flag clocks, one patient beside the other, simply waiting to die. It had gone on this way for 50 years. I foolishly had assumed that everyone had at least a rudimentary knowledge of physiology, Stowe wrote in his autobiography, Dr. Breath. Even more foolishly, I had assumed that a universal awareness of the importance of breathing existed. Nothing could have been farther from the truth. Emphysema is a gradual deterioration of lung tissue marked by chronic bronchitis and coughing. The lungs become so damaged that people with the disease can no longer absorb oxygen effectively. They're forced to take several short breaths very quickly, often breathing in far more air than they need, but still feeling out of breath. Emphysema had no known cure. The nurses, well-meaning, had placed cushions under patients' backs so that their chests were arched up. The idea was to create elevation to ease the inhalations. Stowe instantly saw that this was making the condition worse. Emphysema, he realized, was a disease of exhalation. The patients were suffering not because they couldn't get fresh air into their lungs, but because they couldn't get enough stale air out. So I'm just going to paraphrase here. Obviously, he went on to meet much success. And the takeaway here is Stowe hadn't found a way to reverse emphysema. Lung damage from the disease is permanent. What he'd done is find a way to access the rest of the lungs, the areas that were still functioning, and engage them on a larger level. The cure, Stowe professed, was de facto, but it worked. Over the next decade, he would take his treatment to a half dozen of the largest VA hospitals on the East Coast, sometimes working on patients 7 days a week. He'd go on to treat not only emphysema, but asthma, bronchitis, pneumonia, and more. So, as we know today, those diseases are all, those lung conditions are all long-term effects of not exhaling completely from the damage usually caused by smoking and other things. So here's another little factoid. A typical adult engages as little as 10% of the range of the diaphragm when breathing, which overburdens the heart, elevates blood pressure, and causes a rash of circulatory problems. Extending those breaths to 50 to 70% of the diaphragm's capacity will ease cardiovascular stress and allow the body to work more efficiently. For this reason, the diaphragm is sometimes referred to as the second heart, because it not only beats to its own rhythm, but it also affects the rate and strength of the heartbeat. So, just from that little snippet in this book, you can see how important breathing and breathing well is for our, not only our well-being, but our longevity. Excuse me. So, today I'm going to teach you breathing coordination. This is one of the breathing exercises that's listed in the back that you can do. It comes from one of the chapters in the book, in this chapter right here, where James Nestor, the author, works with one of Carl Stowe's students who is carrying on his legacy and teaching this method of exhaling. And it's very simple. Anyone can do it. I'm going to read to you about it, and then I will model it really quickly, and then just wrap it up from there. So again, it's called breathing coordination, and the technique helps to engage more movement from the diaphragm and increase your respiratory efficiency. It should never be forced. Each breath should feel soft and enriching. Okay, so we want to sit up straight so that the spine is straight and the chin is perpendicular to the body. You don't want it, or perpendicular to the body. I always think of it as level, also level to the floor. We don't want the chin to be sticking up or dropping down. So it's nice and level. And then the instruction is to take a gentle breath in through the nose. At the top of that breath, you're going to begin counting softly aloud from 1 to 10 over and over. So, excuse me, I'll model it again. Excuse me, let me get a drink. I will model it again for you. As you reach the natural conclusion of the exhale, keep counting, but do so in a whisper, letting the voice softly trail out. And then you keep going until just the lips are moving and the lungs feel completely empty. Then we take in another large and soft breath and repeat in through the nose. We can continue this from 10 to 30 or even more cycles. And then he says, once you feel comfortable practicing it sitting, you can try it while walking or jogging or during other light exercise. And then there's a website where you can go for classes or individual coaching that has more information, and we'll be sure and put that in the comments there. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. You're breathing in through your nose. And again, try not to hike the shoulders. I'm going to talk about that when we finish here. But you're going to breathe in through your nose, just a nice comfortable, what I describe to my students as a comfortable fullness in the body, in through the nose. And then you'll start to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you just repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. And then eventually that's going to fall to a whisper. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you keep going with the whisper, keep going with the whisper. And eventually the sound's going to drop off and you're just moving the lips till you feel this emptiness in the lungs. And then it's an inhale through the nose. Again, just to that comfortable fullness, you want to feel that filling the lower regions of the breathing capacity, and then begin again. Work your way up to that 10. I recommend doing 5 and then stop and check it out, see how you're feeling. When you're working with breath, I tell my students this too, when you're working with breath and you are working with techniques that are helping you access more oxygen and deeper breaths, it's quite common to feel dizzy or lightheaded. And if you experience that, that's okay. That's a sign that it's working. Just remain seated and go back to a natural breath until that feeling subsides. And then you can try again. And again, this is when you work up to. Now, a note about the shoulders. So often what happens when we haven't been trained to use our diaphragm effectively or to breathe deeply, effectively, and efficiently, this part of the body starts to become restricted. The diaphragm is a muscle and it has attachments just like the muscles that form our arms and legs. So those attachments can get sticky when they're not used well. And then we add to that our posture, right? If we're hunched over here, we're hardening all of this tissue. So then what you see happen is when people try to take a deep breath, this part doesn't move. So we use more of the scalene muscles that attach from the side of the neck into the top of the rib cage to try to lift the rib cage so we can get more space for the breath. So that's why yoga is so key in helping us sit up straight, first of all, and focusing on the breathing. We want to keep the shoulders relaxed. When that breath comes in through the nose, it's filling down here, not necessarily distending the belly, but extending into the side ribs, the lower ribs, and you feel that space that the diaphragm makes. The diaphragm is shaped like a parachute, right? And the hood drops whenever we breathe in to make more space for the breath. When we breathe out, central tendon releases and the hood of the diaphragm rises, and that's what expels the breath. But it's a very passive action in the body. So unless we're trying to use up all this oxygen through singing, holding a note, or talking, if you've ever been trying to say something and get your thought out before you run out of breath, it's that exact same thing that we're doing. We're just trying to use up all that oxygen however we can. And then so you will feel breath move up, but it's also moving down. It's more important to get it down. All right, so anyway, there's your homework. There's your fun for the week. Play around with that breath, with regulating the breath regulation, I believe is what he calls it. Breathing coordination, and start to teach your diaphragm to move a little bit more. It's not commonly recognized that we can affect this muscle to shift it, to allow for more breath, to help us breathe more deeply. And then once we're breathing deeply, the processes in the body feel very supported, and then this really feeds the nurturing and the health of the physical body. All right, everybody, there's your Wellness Wednesday inspiration. I will see you again next week. Have a great day.